Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Another episode of IPX. I'm your host. I'll get into that in a minute, but yeah, thanks for joining us. Today, we're going to be talking about some product updates that the team has been very excited to get into the hands of our customers and future customers. We're very excited about what we have to show you, and yeah, let's get to it because it's going to be quite a bit that we're going to go through. Um, so, just a quick agenda here. We typically reserve about 15 minutes at the end of this conversation. We'll see if I can get through all this in 45 minutes, but if not, yeah, feel free to just drop questions along the way, and we'll try to pick them up as we go along. Um, and if you're joining us from wherever you're joining us, whether that's YouTube or LinkedIn, feel free to drop in questions in the comments, and that's will kind of surface up over here, and we'll be able to pick them up. Um, quick, the agenda here is very simple. I'm going to intro a little bit about myself for those that might not know who I am. Also, a little bit background about the problems that we're looking to solve here at Integrated Projects, what we've launched this past quarter, and ultimately how to work with us. And then any kind of Q&A. So, sorry, I'm George, head of product here at Integrated Projects. I work together with this amazing beautiful group of people that are really trying to tackle some of the hardest challenges in what we would call, let's say, the pre-construction side of getting things built. In particular, maybe more focused in on this idea of what we call scan to BIM, or what the industry calls scan to BIM. Essentially, how do we digitize the built environment? And there's a lot of benefits to doing that, much of which we might not cover today. But suffice to say that if you have a digital copy of the built world, there's a lot that can benefit, a lot of different use cases, a lot of different people that can benefit over time. And so, a little bit about myself in general. I was trained as a landscape architect and then architect, and transitioned to the SEC. And I spent most of my career working on challenging issues related to the representation of things, physical things, whether that's bringing designs into virtual reality at Iris VR, trying to use some of those technologies, like let's say virtual tours, etc., at places like WeWork to try to pre-sell locations around the world, and then helping architects tackle some time and the value of money, and somewhere along the lines executing better delivery. And that's kind of led me to here, where I get to really take all those different learnings, lessons, and work with this team to dig even deeper into some of the more pressing challenges around the built environment. Um, One of the more like maybe obvious but non-obvious things about the built environment is that everyone's kind of working off of out of date information. And so go visit your local anything, theater, neighborhood library, etc. And if you ask anyone like, hey, what do the floor plans of this look like? They'll probably roll out something very old, something that might smell, something that you might have trouble reading. And that's the reality that a lot of design professionals are faced with, right? It's not uncommon to ask for existing condition drawings of a building and receive this. And that's a problem. And that's a problem because buildings are living things. They live with the tenants that occupy them, and they change. And so, one important kind of like, let's say, big unlock that's happened in the past 10, 15 years has been this move towards digitization through various types of technologies. And they exist in different formats, they exist in different, let's say, levels of detail or resolution, rather. But basically, it's safe to say for many of you that are watching, probably you might already know that there's this kind of big move towards this. And the reality is that we're one of the companies that's really trying to streamline that and make that super easy. Um, just a level set for everybody, like even just at a very high level, like when I say scan to BIM, what is the scanning portion of that? It really means doing things like this: wearing a piece of hardware on site, or carrying another piece of hardware on site that has some very cool technology embedded inside of it, that takes your existing space and turns it into a very neat looking point cloud, a series of dots in space, in three-dimensional space, that doesn't have much meaning on its own. And what we do is we add meaning to that by converting it. And so we'll take that and then bring it into 3D modeling software to be able to give it actual dimensions, give it actual space and volume and thickness, things that you can then use to cut drawings from and actually use that as an updated view of your building. The cool thing about this too, in general, is that now you have multiple formats by which to view your building. And one of the things that's very interesting about, let's say, drawings, and this is kind of from research going back to my time at Iris, is that drawings are actually lies in general. I mean, they tell some truth, but the reality is that they just tell a version of the truth, meaning that if you and I were to look at the same drawing set, the what we imagine that space to be like in actual three dimensions is different. And that makes sense. We have very different views on things probably in general, and we also probably have different views of mentally, like what how we visualize spaces, right? And so being able to go from 2D to 3D is really powerful because there's no ambiguity then, right? The three-dimensional model tells you, gives you all the context about dimensions, volumes, thicknesses all at once. And what we're doing is simplifying that whole process and delivering to everyone involved in designing buildings, from the architects to the contractors to the engineers to the building owners, in a very easy to use, intuitive platform. And we've also had to do a lot of hard things along the way to do this. One of the things we had to do was basically make it easier to place an order. And we're going to be talking about how even that is a continuous, let's say, opportunity that we're chasing, because the built environment is very gnarly, right? It's just there's so much complexity in it. But if we can minimize the scope of work to very simple, let's say, menu of options, we can actually facilitate a lot of things along the way. And then we ultimately deliver all of this in a free viewer, which we'll showcase a little bit more. And we've done it a lot. And we'll get to a little bit of what's important about doing it a lot in a minute. And we've done it a lot also across different sizes of projects. So everything from really small apartments all the way to super large buildings, airports, terminals, etc. And so, pop quiz. This is the Jeopardy question of the show. Um, the feeling you get after you place an order for a service that has important downstream impacts for your project. The answer is order anxiety. Now we're getting to the part where we talk about essentially what are the biggest challenges that we're looking to solve and what you're going to be seeing from our updates. Order anxiety is the name we've given to the overwhelming feeling that people have whenever they hire another vendor that where they have to depend on the delivery of their delivery, right? I mean, order anxiety exists everywhere. It's not just special to us. I'm sure if for you that might hire a subcontractor, there's some anxiety in like dealing with someone new. When you submit an RFP and you get proposals back, there's that inherent, like, let's say, risk involved in like who are you going to hire and then dependencies and all that, right? It's because it's all complicated. But by giving it a name, we've really galvanized around this idea and had really made it a mission to solve this. Because for us, it's if we can solve this for people, minimize order anxiety, ultimately we allocate more trust to us, right? And there's a lot of different things that I think for those that are listening, an interesting takeaway about this presentation is that it's not just a presentation about what we do, but how we do it. Meaning that, like, what I'm communicating to you all is also a way of thinking about how to think about business in general. And I want to add that flavor in because I think that's kind of important to think about, because a lot of what we're speaking here is actually applicable even in your own businesses outside of what we're doing. So anyway, side note. But so what drives the anxiety, right? Ultimately, it's a function of time, expectations, and bottlenecks that people face. And they face it in particular to our, let's say, domain of scope of work in project planning, getting critical information when they need it, and ultimately, how do you align stakeholders on those expectations, et cetera, right? Because typically the better expectations you set up front, the better alignment you have downstream. It reasons then that you have less complexity or less issues downstream. So with order anxiety, we had to take a hard look at ourselves last year and start thinking about what's the traditional life of an order. And this can be abstracted to any kind of business in some sense, but for us, it's, we people get a quote. They then provide an order date. We then provide a virtual tour and a point cloud. And then there was kind of this silence in some sense about, okay, we gave you the estimated time of arrival. Here's the delivery date, and we were going to deliver on that date. But along that way, there's a lot of manual work that's being done. And the challenge is like, how do we then like proactively give people value along the journey, right? Because this is where order anxiety kicks in, right? Once you have the virtual tour and point cloud, you know, the process is such design that essentially that anxiety might increase until we tell you, hey, it's ready, right? And so being reflective about that, we really thought, okay, like we have to help manage this anxiety for people and align our entire delivery process accordingly. And so we went very systematically and looked at the very beginning of everything. How do we set better expectations at the start? And we were very systematic, and maybe for another presentation, even showing the kind of whiteboards and the thinking around this stuff might be really interesting for folks. So if that is interesting, please reach out, and we can make that happen. But we started at the very beginning for most of our services, which is scan it, and scan it is basically the end to end solution where you go and mobilize us on site. We then scan the entire project for you and then deliver it in these different assets through a portal, right? So currently, we have a very simple method in which one can place an order through our platform. We're very much inspired by, basically the kind of almost like e-commerce, simple one-click buying process that you get in most everyday life, right? We know that that's how most people operate in almost every other part of their life outside of most business to business transactions. And so by simplifying that, it's basically our bet that if we do that, we can actually help provide a lot more value for customers. And one of the things that we are launching and have launched actually this week is what we call these two very simple things. They're toggles, right? COI toggle and control points. And I might maybe segue into quick preview of what that looks like. So this is our ordering process. I already pre-filled in some of the information about the project. Now we have here, we can now go to order details, and you should be able to see, oh, I might have to refresh this. I think it's in the next one. Oh, you know what? Any demo, it will break. Let me see if I can refresh this. Sorry. All right, you're gonna see me go from the beginning. Okay. So in here we go. Just gonna give it an address. It's gonna try to spare everyone of this whole thing. I'm just gonna put test here for now. Gonna see this here. Okay, floor one. Pick a. Let's just call this a laboratory for now. A couple things here to note, right, is that you get instant pricing here, and you also get an expected delivery date. And I think that's the kind of critical piece of like what we're talking about from the very beginning. How do we simplify that whole journey? We'll also talk about this new calculate ROI in a minute, but hopefully we can see here. Boom, there you go. Nice, just have to refresh it. So we now have project controls. Uh, so to step back, project controls. Basically, whenever you have a large, for those that are work more closely into the ins and outs of the construction side, project controls help anchor through either geolocation or relative local location within a building, basically a way to register the work that we do to just like hooks or like these markers that we can then align the complexity of what we're doing and deliver accuracy ultimately. So these type of markers that are put into these buildings, they help to act as a reference point for not just us, but also the entire project team, to be able to make sure that all the modeling is aligned accordingly. So it's accurate to relative and real world constraints. So the reality is that most people might not think to place this as a part of an order, or might not think to have their clients sign off on this. And so, most of our customers are within the AEC, architecture, engineering, construction industry, and so therefore they may or may not know the relative importance of this. And so what we're trying to do here is ultimately simplify the ordering experience by elevating potential conflicts that might arise sooner. So by even asking the question about project controls, it should help, help basically ramp people up to speed on like, hey, the importance of this, why does this matter, etc. Um, and the project control is very important because as you start to deal with larger, spaces, think of a airport terminal. The reality is the tools that exist today, they kind of drift over time. It's very hard for a camera to really anchor itself over a long distance. And so therefore you need these markers in place to be able to align everything over a long enough distance such that you maintain accuracy. So it's a lot going into a very simple toggle, but if you think about the consequences of not doing that, meaning you have a lot of inaccuracies, etc., because clients didn't sign off on something, that's you can understand how this toggle actually could mean the difference between thousands of dollars or millions of dollars of rework. It's actually a pretty valuable little toggle. Um, and then the other one is a certificate of insurance. This is also one of those things that we're looking to simplify by just alerting, project managers who typically might order this through this order form. They might not be aware that they need to secure COI from their client, or they may be aware, but they might have forgotten, right? And so for us, it's about being proactive about surfacing that up so that when we can really minimize any delay as much as possible, right? The more information we get up front about it, the more success we can have on a project. And if you were part of our RFP conversation last 2 weeks ago, then you'll know we're really big on both of these items, and we're very excited that they're now here to toggle. So those are those 2 points. Um, Now we also are trying to simplify this is more kind of in the works right now, but we're also looking to simplify more complex forms of ordering. Essentially, how do we help? One thing is to select square footage and then scope of work, but what happens when you have multiple buildings or multiple floors on different buildings? How do you manage that complexity? And we're very excited to have something out soon, and it's maybe more public facing, but internally, we're starting to use this to be able to break down very, very large, complicated projects into a very simple, intuitive way. Because the goal here is to provide our customers quotes as fast as possible, right? The faster we can provide you a quote, the faster you can go back to your client, get sign off on it, and we can remove the kind of delays that are happening in these very compressed timelines. So, ROI calculator. Um, this one is very important, I think, also important in terms of like removing the ambiguity around placing an order, understanding what you're going to get, etc. And so with this one, we now have an ROI calculator where with some inputs, you can actually download a report that basically tells you, for this project, what from like relative alternatives, um, whether that's you purchase your own hardware or you actually or mobilize your own hardware or um, do the modeling in house with very simple rough sort of broad brushstrokes. You can start to get a sense of what the ROI can be on this by working with us. And so it's a helpful tool to help, for those project managers that have a hard time sort of wrapping their heads around like, what's the alternative here? How much might this cost if we just did it in house? Well, we're really trying to simplify that for you so you can do all the math for yourself and then see if it makes sense for the project that you're doing. And we hope that we can earn your business by kind of showing you some proof in the pudding. Um, okay, so that's it's more of these kind of like interesting, let's say, updates related to ordering, but we think they're very critical because they can help streamline a lot. So now the next series of updates we're going to talk about has to do with sorry, how do we tackle this like big area of anxiety for folks. Um, what we've done is we've broken this up, and after a lot of consideration and talking to a lot of folks, a lot of our previous customers, and getting their feedback, um, we reevaluated the process and reorganized that such that we can deliver and answer real important questions for our customers sooner than later. And that is a very critical, let's say, we're going to hear more about this over time, but it's a real critical theme for us is how do we deliver different types of assets, answer different types of questions for our customers as soon as possible. And the way we've done that is we've broken up our delivery into what we now call fast track delivery. So fast track essentially allows our customers over 10,000 square feet, over a project that's 10,000 square feet, the ability to get these assets immediately. So right after we scan, you get a virtual tour and a segmented point cloud for those in your modeling team that might want to look at something and hide different elements in it. And I'll talk more about that in a bit because that's really exciting on its own. We also have now something we call core background. We're also delivering architecture, MEPF, and furniture, these different scopes in this sequence. And the reality is that why this sequence? It's really through the feedback of understanding the timelines in which a lot of this stuff is happening. So different people are involved. Architecture needs, the core and shell, and basically all of the elements that are surrounding architecture helped designers start to get in there and validate assumptions, start design work, etc. Mechanical MEPF engineers the mechanical engineers are typically brought in a little bit later in a process, so therefore we can meet them at the right time. And then furniture is typically lingering items that are either movable or unmovable, but they're kind of part of a more flexible framework. And the to kind of dive a little bit deeper onto that, I'd say for core background, this is brand new for us. This is going to leverage a lot of what we are going to talk about in a minute to be able to deliver this to customers. Essentially, with this, you will now be able to get levels and grids um, within, I believe, a couple, like either 1 to 2 days, up to 4 to 5 days, depending on the size of the project itself. But essentially, this will be the first asset that will be delivered, and it leverages one of our unique innovations that we're building called well, I'll get to it in a minute. Um, and the other feature update that we have is we've now released the fast track delivery timeline. So now for orders that are above 10,000 square feet, you will now see in this kind of order portal that we have, and I'll just quickly maybe highlight what that looks like here so people can see the portal itself. Yeah. Um, so this is kind of an order portal, or order dashboard rather, where you have the big, let's say the big milestones for a project outline. So this is the kind of timeline, almost like the pizza delivery tracker at the high level. Now we're introducing a new panel in here that was referred to over here. That's going to break down up to even the floor level. But it's going to show you all the different assets that you're going to get along the way. So point cloud, architecture, MEPF, core background will all be listed here, and you'll be able to download those assets immediately from here. And so, in other words, more clarity about what you're going to get and when you're going to get it. Okay, let's see. Let's move on. So, okay, so we talked about what happens before an order happens. We talked about what happens during an order. And now what happens after we've delivered this amazing asset or series of assets? I think it's helpful to talk a little bit about use cases. So, how do people use an existing conditions model? Like, if you think about the reasons why people need to go in and scan in the first place, within the timeline, let's say there's kind of two different major use cases, things that happen before some renovation or something's going to change, and then after the fact when things have already changed and people want what are called as builts. Those are kind of two different, let's say, part of a dumbbell, right? There have two different events that happen along this process. At the beginning, however, you have different stakeholders involved. You have design teams within architecture firms, you have construction teams, engineering teams, etc. And all of them need a lot of more tooling to be able to communicate. Now, the tooling that we're going to talk about in a minute is also going to be helpful for those that already have assets that they just want to better manage and better track. So it's our way of trying to address both avenues with one kind of motion of tools that are going to be really powerful. I think this idea of collaboration and bringing together various assets in a one intuitive location is what you're going to hear more about for the rest of this year. The first thing that we've launched in the past quarter is bring it's simple but very powerful, which is to bring actual maps within IPX. And what this allows to do is now actually bring in more context. And through the features that we're going to start to see from us, this idea of bringing in context and making context useful throughout different parts of viewing a model or talking about a model or communicating or collaborating around a model. These are the things that you're going to start to see from us pretty soon. And so, very simply, we allowed street view, top view, and perspective view within IPX. I'll probably go through these a little quickly and then just show you. But essentially, um, the other thing that we've launched in the past quarter is this kind of toolbar. And this toolbar now has a series of different capabilities, one of which is very simple, but also powerful, which is cutting sections. And sections are really powerful within a 3D environment because then you start to see the relationships of heights, of volumes, of spaces within one and each other. And it can help for different communicating different challenges that people might face. Um, we now have also the ability to share images for presentations. So now that you've created, let's say, a section box around, let's say, a space, and you've added measurement, how do you then relay that information to someone else, right? Um, Measurements themselves are now captured within IPX, and we're going to start to see how we can make more use of those measurements throughout different, let's say, assets that are being generated. So think of reports or things of other ways in which we can start to leverage that information and transform it into insight. Comments and context. I think this one is probably the most exciting out of all these, insofar as it's really the first step to a way of us thinking about collaboration in this kind of pre-construction environment, but also in an environment in which people need to just talk about buildings throughout the lifespan of a building, and they need to have conversations with internal folks and external folks, and again surface up the context that they're getting from different tools, right? So this foundation that we're building of being able to get, different, let's say, um, different views, different types of information, different contexts, and making that leverageable is going to be really powerful now with this. We've also made improvements to our quantity takeoffs. So now we are moving towards more organization of this information. So really powerful that we are able to convert this into a 3D model at all, because now we have an actual database, right? These buildings are databases of quantity counts, of elements, etc., that can be leveraged for other purposes. We've talked to folks about how they're leveraging it for digital twin initiatives, where they want to take the same geometry that we provide and turn it into enrich this tabular data with their own either business logic or manufacturing information, et cetera, and then start to enrich the quality of the model and the kind of information that the model has. And so by us being able to make more investments into this, all these things that we're talking about are going to piece together into a way in which you can get way more context about a building over its lifespan. Now, all this is really in everything we talked about, especially the first two sections, are about trying to decrease the time to getting useful data. And so the everything from the ordering process down to the let's say the fast track delivery initiative that we're doing, all this is to try to get you on site, making impactful design decisions as quickly as possible. At the same time, we cannot sacrifice the quality of what we're doing. And so, one of the things that you'll see from us over time is talking more about this, talking more about our standards, sharing more examples of our standards. We have a lot of really interesting initiatives that I think we're going to be kind of game changing on their own for the industry insofar as us leveraging the kind of really amazing operational intelligence that we built internally and making that accessible for others. Um, Now, one critical piece of what we're doing is the acceleration of just this section here, which is the section where we get a point cloud and we're able to turn around a very valuable asset very quickly. And if you follow us on LinkedIn or YouTube, you might have heard of something we are cooking, where we're able to leverage the over 5,000 projects that we've done, et cetera, and focus it really specifically on a very narrow use case architecture across all the other things that we could do. And we've taken that, we've defined it, we've given it actual properties like what requirements and standards for this. And we've taken all those insights and then actual data and developed something we call First Draft, which is now in alpha. And First Draft is essentially a machine learning based pipeline that can take this sparse matrix of points, semantically segmented so that we understand what are walls, doors, windows, columns, toilets. I think we do sinks, toilet roll dispensers. It gets even more and more granular. Can lights, different types of lights in the ceiling. Uh, Pretty crazy, right? And so we're able to now start to make sense of that and then turn that into a 3D model. Um, and so here's some example shots from that pipeline. And you'll start to see some things like, from the point cloud side, we start to get things, the yellows like lights. I was mentioning can lights, which is pretty crazy. Can lights, I don't have any in this room, but can lights are, they're pretty close to a surface. So even being able to detect them and register them from just a sparse series of points is pretty nuts. But here we go. We're able to do that. And so that hasn't yet folded itself into a 3D model yet, but you can imagine that as we start to make these advancements, it will in short order. So what you're seeing here is everything here is the segmented point cloud model, the 3D model itself. That's all under First Draft. Then you have the QA/QC part of our traditional BIMIT service, which is really the kind of handcrafted attention to making sure that that model is fully built out, fully crafted. And now we're now leveraging this entire pipeline internally and seeing some exciting results. And maybe to step back again to that kind of like meta part of the conversation around how to think about internal initiatives, right? We talked to a lot of architecture firms, construction firms, et cetera, who even struggle to think too also about how to organize their own initiatives, et cetera. And one important thing that we've done is that we have North Star metrics associated with them, right? So for First Draft, it's not for us, it's a very systematic way of doing this. So we have a very systematic way of doing this. We have about 3 to 4 maybe different metrics that we look at, but 3 here that are very important is the time per square foot. So essentially, how fast can we deliver a model within a certain specific scope at a per square foot basis? And that can get expanded based on other things later in the future in terms of complexity. But right now, to keep it a bit simple, it's mostly based on square footage. Time to first submission. So how fast does it take us to get from getting that point cloud to returning that first submission? How and what are the ways in which we can compress that time? And then number of revisions would be what you would call a pairing metric or a counter metric, which is to say, you can't sacrifice one thing for the other. So we can't just deliver a crappy model really, really fast. We also have to bake into it how do we look at revisions in order to make sure that we're not negatively impacting the amount of times that we might have to revise a model internally. And so those things together really inform this initiative as a whole, and alongside some other stuff that we'll get into more in the coming weeks. But maybe to step back, this has been a crazy journey that really started with Jose, our founder and CEO, coming up, having this vision early on that we could do this, and bringing on really talented people to make that happen. And so, big shout out here goes to the ML team and the BIM Ops team, but in particular, the foresight of bringing people on that had that sensibility, that had that expertise and knowledge to be able to do this is pretty phenomenal. Um, so the roadmap itself starts predates Q3 of last year, but in Q3 is when we first started to really test out the output that we're having and build simple tooling internally. Q4, we then launched a more public version of this. We built the infrastructure for a very simple, bit fragile pipeline, but has strengthened since then. And in Q1, we really focused on observability, like how do we make sure that this pipeline is more resilient, et cetera? How do we improve the telemetry? Coming up with novel ways of thinking about telemetry for this, because we're breaking new ground here in some ways about how to do things like recall. So how do you measure the false positives, false negatives you might get from something like this that's taking just abstract point clouds and turning them into a model. And in Q2, which you'll hear more about now, we're also not only optimizing recall but expanding some elements to fill out the architecture scope in its entirety. And so we're very, very excited to announce that we now have ceilings. You'll probably hear from us these kind of like sequential launches of different element types, but this one's really, really cool. And in part, it's because it's very hard. I mean, I cannot underscore enough when you start to see these point clouds and play with them, navigate them. Ceilings are very, very thin, just series of points. They're super thin, and it's not even thin that they're like linear like a pancake. It's actually they're kind of like bumpy, right? Because these scans aren't like necessarily hyper hyper accurate on their own. But the fact that we can then take that and convert it into ceilings is pretty powerful. One, because of that, the thinness. Second, it's also because it provides context to a lot more information about a space. And so that is going to see itself play out in the future as an interesting marker, data point on its own. And we just super excited about this. We're very excited to get this into the hands of more people through the alpha program. And yeah, we just want to keep testing it out for folks that are curious in seeing it happen. But this is really, really exciting. Now, to talk a little bit more behind the scenes of it, this is just like our internal. Shout out to the ML team for this kind of tooling, but kind of the internal tooling that we have that allows us to see. Excuse me, I'm gonna do a little Marco Rubio here and clear my throat. But essentially, what we're doing here is we have walls, right, which you see here on the left hand side, and we have ceilings. And more to the point, I just want to highlight sort of like the boundary condition that we're seeing here. So in some instances, you'll still see some maybe like I'm trying to look for like false negatives. Here there's a wall that extends out here. There's some area here that was missed. So we're still seeing some of that. But I mean, the fact that as a whole we can produce this much is incredible, especially the amount of time savings this has for the modeling team is pretty significant. And so just encourage you to just think that like where we are today is not where we're going to be tomorrow, and it's definitely not we're going to be where we're going to be in 6 months. So just stay tuned for more on that. And before I dive into the next Jeopardy, the I see my time here. Okay, we're gonna a little bit good on time. Just to kind of showcase a little bit of how we look at things here and the kind of tooling. Again, going back to the focus on observability and telemetry and like how do we make more sense of of what we're delivering and make more targeted improvements. These are various results from various parts of our pipeline that we've built. And I won't go too into detail into them, but basically, we have very different ways of doing what we're doing. And we have different ways of unifying that work such that we get better results. And so we have different strategies that we take, and then we ultimately produce a much more refined result here. And really shout out to Waylian on the team who like stood this whole thing up. And it's just incredible to see, this kind of like industry defining tooling being built here around this. So yeah, I think we should probably do more to maybe bring more people in to have these kind of more technical conversations. For those that are interested, please definitely reach out, and we can maybe set up more private lunch and learns with your team's internal, whether in AEC in general. But yeah, so before I jump to this, I do want to spend some time maybe demoing the actual updates themselves. So, all right. So this is for those that might not know. This is like how we deliver projects. We have a platform, IPX, easily accessible. You can actually just go to IPX, this URL. Maybe someone might drop it into the notes. Um, and not only can you do ordering from here, right, through that simple um, experience that we mentioned earlier, but you can also navigate even just from our website some of the byproducts of what we deliver. I'll just jump into this school, for example, and just highlight some of the things that we're talking about. So we have now a couple of tools here on the. Sorry, let me just make sure I can see. Oh, might be hard to see. See, I can pop this out a little bit. Um, I think my name is hiding the toolbar itself. Not sure how to hide that label. No, don't know. Okay, so we're going to have to use our imaginations a bit, unfortunately. But there's tooling down here. There's a toolbar down here where you can actually then use a section cut tool to move through the building and take slices, right, or slice the building. We also have the ability to create a section box around a specific series of elements. So, for example, let's just take, I don't know, this column. You can right click on it, and part of what we're doing is bringing some industry known tooling to make it more useful for people that don't have access to tools like fancy tools like Revit, etc. But I'm gonna here pop this out. Yeah, so we can start to expand the box and see more information about the box. And what's nice about this is that we can basically start to get a better sense of what this space is like. And then from here, you can then start to do other things like take a screenshot. So I'd mentioned this, right? It's going to drop a screenshot in here. Nice thing about our screenshot is that it actually exports as a PNG. So it's very easy to just drop it into a presentation and add your notations on it there. You can also draw measurement. So we have a measuring tool down there in that toolbar where you can, let's see here, kind of move around and just click on a couple points together and start to get some measurements from that. Oh, pressing the wrong spot. Um, but yeah, so essentially, you're able to bring some of this tooling into your workflow. We've also had, as I mentioned, the new kind of quantity counts. That's more about counts, areas, and links organized by the type of family that is available in the model. And then we also have adding comments. So now we can select an element. And by the way, for this one, really appreciate any kind of feedback that you might have about this. I know there's probably going to be very obvious questions about bringing this into ACC and how to close the loop there. We already offer the ability to export the model to Autodesk Construction Cloud. So you can imagine that this is very much in our roadmap as we want to tie some of these workflows together. But for those that don't, even if you don't have ACC, you can still make really good use of this. And we want to get more feedback here about what kind of images do we want to see, I mean, et cetera. Like for example, in acquisition use cases, where someone is trying to figure out whether they're going to procure a space, scanning that space, which we used to do often at WeWork, and I know happens at some other places, to kind of validate and maybe renegotiate leases, etc. But being able to take those assets and then have a conversation about, hey, or associate images to it. This is the kind of things that we want to talk more about with folks. So if yeah, feel free to reach out to me and we can maybe schedule some time to kind of see where this can go. But from our own perspective, what we want to bring together is a lot of these different assets that we have, the section box tools, the section cuts themselves, the images, bring them into a longer form conversation that people can have internally, as well as bringing other assets that might be available about a building and interlinking them in unique ways, or making the context of one make relevant and useful in another. Like for maps and etc. Right. This is the one that we were talking about a little bit earlier. Being able to then bring in, come on site and start to do some early due diligence on just from here, right? Take a picture of this, bring it in and associate it to the model so that you can start to have a conversation about what is currently in the space. Um, okay, I'm looking at the time. I'm gonna speed up a little bit, but yeah. So to kind of wrap up a little bit here. So Daily Double, what's the platform or the platform and the service that helps AEC teams drive better project outcomes from the start? What is IPX? We work with a lot of different customers, and from large construction companies to owner operators, and we want to continue to be a valuable resource to this industry, and to hopefully you and your organization, if you once we get to learn a little bit more about you. So let's fast track your next project. There's a QR code here. Feel free to scan it. We'll probably drop in something in the chat in YouTube and LinkedIn so that you can find it there if you're looking at us from there. So, yeah, very simple. We'll help you identify the next project. We'll help you whether test out first draft, hopefully in totality with fast track, and then we can then do a recap on the ROI of that project, which I think is a huge benefit to you and your company as well to um, basically help educate everyone on the value of getting all this information up front. Now, in 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, we're going to have a new webinar that we're very excited about. Tyler, um, my counterpart here at IPX, who leads the solutions team, we're very excited about helping folks educate others about the value of Scandibin. And I think going back to the highlight of this issue with, excuse me, I need like cough drops. Going back to the what we talked about at the very beginning, which was how even for things like project controls, like the reality is that these type of technologies are cutting edge, but they're very unequally distributed within the industry. And part of that reason is because there's a gap. The gap is a knowledge gap. It's a knowledge gap between um, the folks who get hired to coordinate around projects and the um, folks like us, maybe the people who are more skilled at a very specific set of tooling that can help unlock massive outcomes for folks. That gap, we want to help bridge it. We want to make it easier for folks in the industry to speak to the benefit to their clients. And the way we're going to do that is providing you with very helpful resources, free presentations, templates, slides, things that you can drop into your own presentations to help your clients understand the value. We want to work with you to help you tell a better story. Because if we help tell the better story, then ultimately everyone wins. Like projects win, clients win, they get better outcomes in the projects. There's less issues with clashes, or at least clashes can be solved sooner, etc. So all these things can be done, but it's actually the biggest bottleneck we have found is not so much the technology, it's there. It's really this education layer. And we want to provide all the tools necessary needed to help bridge that gap. So very excited to start that process with Tyler. And yeah, we're very pumped. So if you have any questions, please be with Tyler and Jose. They're super excited to talk to you. If you're existing customer, reconnect. If not, yeah, help you with any project that you have. Um, and I think that's it. Let's see if there's any questions. Nice, 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 nice. Okay, I'm gotta scroll up. Sorry. Um, okay, so John has a good question. Jose already answered it. Um, yes, it's also shared. Yep, the point cloud is also part of an asset. It's an RCS. We deliver the point cloud in RCS format. Um, Abhishek want to join and work with our team. Let's connect. Hopefully, I think there's some answers there. How do y'all work with companies that have modeling standards? Yeah, that's a great question. Um, and I think someone from our team answered it. Basically, we do have an enterprise service that can help with companies that have specific and unique requirements, like their own modeling standards. And feel free to reach out to our solutions team because they can walk you through what that looks like. Essentially, it's our way of helping organizations um, leverage our operational muscle on future projects. And so, yeah, best place to start is with a conversation with the team. Awesome. Describe the pricing. Yes. Okay. So the pricing, so IPX is actually included for free, right? It's included in all orders. So everything that we showed right now here, all of this is included with every project. And really importantly, um, if you think about what are the very unique things about this, one is that you don't need Revit to open this. You can just explore the model without a Revit license. And Revit licenses, they're really powerful, obviously, to be able to create the Revit's a very powerful tool to create these things. Um, but ultimately, not everyone in the industry has the same level of expertise when it comes to it. And so being able to easily share this out to a client, a building owner, add them to the team, give them either view only or download access or full access if you want to allow them to share to other folks. Um, that is one way in which you can improve the client experience in general from the perspective of either an architecture firm or a construction company that wants to show kind of um, basically show the give their own clients an intuitive way to navigate the work that's being done. Um, that can all be done through here. So you have fewer access control. We are SOC 2 compliant, so it is very secure. And we, yeah. So essentially, all this. What's crazy is all this is for free. It's just included with the service that we deliver. Matthew, great question. Where's all the data stored? We have federal efforts that cannot be stored on public clouds. That one, I think you should talk to our team about that one because we use AWS like most other folks, but we can work with you to solve for, let's say, more private cloud solutions. But it would be great to just have a deeper conversation about that. See any questions? Well, just gonna let it marinate for a second. Think if there's no more questions, we can kind of wrap it up early. Really appreciate everyone's time for hearing me kind of suffer through clearing my throat and figuring out. It's interesting because I have a high res mic, a pretty good mic, and I'm sure it's only clearer as to like the struggle. But I very much appreciate it. I'm about to go down a whole glass of water, and hopefully I don't lose my voice for the rest of the day. But appreciate you for listening. I will see you again here in 2 weeks. Please meet with our team if you're curious about learning more. We're happy to do a lunch and learn. Happy to talk to your team in Zoom, expose as much under the hood so that your team understands more about what we're cooking and engage in a dialogue on different topics. I would say actually because you know we all we I'd say the majority of us come from the industry from a passion, right? From we are very much interested in improving it. Um we it's not just lip service. Like for us, it's not even talking about the service at the end of the day. It's even just talking about these meta concepts around how do you innovate in construction? How do you like what does that even operationally look like? What does it even mean, right, to do that? And I think even those conversations are ones that we're very excited to have because we want to provide some of what we're learning along the way to other folks. And so, it can be as about the service itself, or it can be as more strategic things about how do you bring innovation to your own company. So, um, yeah, please reach out. All our team is very game. We're all, I think, pretty good conversationalists. I hope so. You won't have a boring time, at least. All right. Thanks everyone for your time. Really appreciate it. I'll see you next time. Get you some cool templates, some cool slides to share.